Commandant Shieldbearer. The gate to Babylon stands open to you. What has become of Alexander? The men camped outside the city are restless. I know of his illness and of the Chaldean omen. He should not have entered the city. This kingdom was won by my father, or perhaps I should say it was built, from the rubble left in the wake of Alexander's conquests and the chaos left in the wake of his demise. However, he was one of several brilliant veteran commanders vying for power, not to mention the companions and bodyguards, satraps, nobility, and essentially anyone with the slightest inclination of world domination. The only people not in contention for a piece of the old Persian Empire were the Persians themselves. I did originally say the kingdom was won, and this is partially true. Seleukos, my father, reclaimed the satrapy of Babylon with an emphatic, if not entirely decisive, victory at the Battle of Gaza over the son of Antiochos I, the impetuous Demetrius the Besieger. The half-truth I have told is this. My father was victorious at Gaza, but he rode into battle under Ptolemy's banner. Demetrius's war elephants stumbled upon and were impaled by Seleukos's devious spike traps, or they were brought down by arrows, spears, javelins, ropes, and chains. The loss of the elephant corps was sufficient to throw the Antigonids into disarray, and though outnumbered and outmatched, not for the first time, or the last time in his illustrious career, Seleukos pieced together a victory with his wit, using the materials at his disposal. With Demetrius in full retreat and Ptolemy in pursuit, my father and his loyal men set off immediately for Babylon, under the banner of the Seleukid anchor.
You are the Seleukid Empire, but your grip on your eastern satrapies is weakening. Bactria is already independent, and Patharva and others may also attempt to break away. Meanwhile, to the south, the Ptolemies of Egypt are scheming against you. Their desire to control your Syrian lands may yet bring about war. Although stability to the north and west may be assured by the Sardes, who remain loyal, the warlike Galatians and the Hellenistic states of Asia Minor threaten your borders. The future of Alexander's legacy is in your hands. The Seleukid Empire must not fall.
Welcome to the Astronomical Apocrypha, the new Seleukid Empire narrative Let's Play series for Total War Rome 2, featuring the Divide et Impera mod. I'm using a couple of other mods which you can find in the episode description. In the role of Antiochos I, known as the Savior, we'll be trying to consolidate the enormous chunk of territory left by his father, Seleukos the Conqueror. With such a large swath of starting territory under control, I think it's helpful to take it all in on the map. We occupy the entirety of Mesopotamia and what the game calls Syria, or the northern half of the Levant. The Ptolemies control the southern half, called Nabatea. We also control the eastern or smooth portion of Cilicia, while the Cypriots have a colony in the more mountainous region to the west, and to the north our ally Sardis controls sections of Cappadocia and western Asia Minor. To the east lay the numerous satrapy states, presumably with a Hellenistic governor, but all quite hostile thanks to our Overlords of the East faction trait. These will most likely break away and/or declare war, and will either need to be placated or subdued in due time. You can see from the wealth graphic that our region capitals of Seleucia on the Tigris, which appropriately displaces Babylon on the map, and Antioch are generating most of our income, along with a small foothold in Asia Minor of Tarsus. With Antiochus continuing his father's aggressive program of city founding and repopulation, our region growth is sky high across the map. The politics panel is Rome 2's somewhat lackluster alternative to the family tree. Our main faction, the Seleukid dynasty, is headed by Antiochus I, who's listed as 34 years old, which is too young to account for his participation in the wars of the Diadochi, but perhaps he looks young for his age. Though a born leader with good judgment, he's anxious about his role as king, and is overly generous to his people, whether they're Greek or Persian. His son, Antiochus II, just 18 years old, is similarly circumspect about his actions, perhaps unsurprising given his devotion to the study of philosophy. From the generically titled Other Families, we have the 36-year-old Cordelion, our admiral situated off the coast of Antioch with his small fleet, a man with very similar qualities as Antiochus himself. Archelaus is a currently unassigned statesman of 35, and lastly Diogenes, a cheerful and wealthy but otherwise unremarkable general overseeing Babylonia in the absence of Antiochus or his son. We currently have 61% influence, granting a number of benefits from public order to research and tax income. Currently the faction just isn't large enough to have a chance for civil war, so this is fine. Next I tried to sort out the diplomatic situation, which is on the brink of disaster. Our eastern satrapies are on the verge of rebellion. Bactria has already left the nest, and the Ptolemies, though not at war with us, remain hostile given the critical territories at stake in Syria and Jerusalem. The one bright spot is Asia Minor, where the friendly Cappadocians are threatened by the Celts to the north. They're extremely receptive to our entreaties, eventually agreeing to trade, military access, alliance, and a hefty payment for our protection. Our satrapy Sardis also agrees to trade, as do the Rhodians and the Armenians. Reviewing the short-term chapter objectives, we need to hold 13 settlements, of which we already have 9, with bonus objectives we can meet by starting a war in Syria with the Ptolemies, capturing their settlement of Judea, and controlling the entirety of Cilicia. All of these objectives boil down to a war with the powers that be in Egypt, as the Cypriots, who control the remainder of Cilicia, are their ally. I tried to bargain with Ptolemy Philadelphus to relinquish their relationship with Cyprus, but to no avail. I next set about reining in the chaos across the kingdom. In Divide et Impera, your armies cause public order penalties when garrisoned inside a city, so I began by moving Antiochus Soter out of Antioch to Tarsus, where I've started to add some Gallic light cavalry to his army, the children of Tyche. I've done the same with my generals at Edessa and Seleucia. I've started upgrading the infrastructure at Mesopotamia, starting by expanding the nascent Seleucia with a muster field and industrial workshops on the outskirts. I would like to recruit some governors, which replace dignitaries among the agents in DEI, although I don't have the required technology, which is down the philosophy branch of the civic technology tree. With plenty of money left to spend for my diplomatic endeavors, I add some ships to Cordelian's fleet, the Heralds of Triton, and upgrade the port at Antioch to a harbor. It's fortunate that we've moved into Asia Minor, since the warlike Galatians have attacked our satrapy Sardis. Rhodes offers a non-aggression pact, and I'm reasonably happy to go along with them for now. 3 of our 6 satrapies, Asagarda, Parthava, and Harava, have wasted little time in declaring their independence. With my plans for Cyprus on hold for the moment, I send our spy, a young woman named Eurydice, into the mountains of rough Cilicia to scout the recent Galatian acquisition of Iconium. With the city garrison in bad shape, it seems that now is a good time for Antiochus to make good on his promise to defend his friends in Asia Minor, and his reputation as savior, so I move him north through Cappadocia to approach the settlement of Iconium. I've mostly exhausted both the treasury and my income with the war effort underway, so I'm not able to do much building, just an upgrade to the farms in Syria, while Cordelian secures the valuable trade route from Antioch into the Aegean. Koinon and Galaton move their small army briefly out of Iconium, but quickly scurry back to the city on sighting Antiochus' force. Another of our satrapies, Strangiana, who to this point have remained loyal, have come under attack by their neighbors the Takashila, and again Antiochus supports his friends, entering the war with our ally. We've suffered some attrition, although the game doesn't say why. I'm negative in neither food nor income. We've also received word of 2 far-off factions coming near to war over the island of Syracuse. The Carthaginians are well known, and although I'm sure Antiochus has heard of Rome, we've little to fear from a tiny peninsular tribe of warmongering peasants. Eurydice tries to poison the wells at Iconium, but is wounded for her efforts. I feel Antiochus can easily take this weakened city nevertheless, so I go in for a frontal assault. The auto-resolve gives me excellent odds, and suggests about 85% of the army will be left. I don't feel this is unreasonable, but I want to fight our first battle, so I decide to take control of the assault manually, and see if we can do any better to minimize our losses. Overall, this is a relatively weak army, with a few units of levy pikemen and Iranian spears. I do have a couple of eastern skirmishers and a regiment of eastern slingers, and a strong cavalry advantage with my Greek and Gallic horsemen. My one trump card is the single regiment of super heavy Indian elephant cataphracts, probably a match for the rest of the army by itself, but I don't think we'll need them for this battle. I'm in no hurry, so I set my army to walk speed and advance on the Galatian army who have met us in the hills north of the city outskirts. As I reach the enemy, they're joined on the small crest by the small and weak Iconian garrison. In a move to attempt to encircle the enemy, I send the elephants left while Antiochus and his cavalry head right. Without waiting for me to even test the waters with my skirmishers, the Gallic tridesmen do what they do best, charging headlong down the slope at our infantry front line. After scrambling to put the game speed back to normal, I still managed to get my skirmishers out in front for a couple of volleys. Antiochus and his cavalry intercept the solitary regiment of attacking Gallic cavalry, who find themselves caught between the Iranian spears and a huge number of my own Gallic as well as Macedonian cavalry. As the Galatian infantry collide with my central front line of pikes, I swing the under unit of Iranian spears up on the left to envelop the enemy attack, although there are still a few units streaming down behind the slope to their comrades. The Gallic spearmen add their strength to the large cluster in the center, while the enemy general charges his own cavalry regiment into the front of my obliquely facing Iranian spears on the left. Antiochus and the cavalry circle around toward the enemy rear, taking a slightly longer route to avoid the remaining uncommitted unit of spears, who are addressed with my right-hand Iranian unit. I then split our cavalry up, sending one unit off to deal with the archers on the slope, while the remainder situate themselves for a rear charge. With the enemy attacked in the rear, it only takes a few seconds for their entire army to begin wavering, and most of the units break very quickly. My skirmishers add some firepower to the ongoing melee with the enemy general, but it isn't too long before he too is in full retreat.
It's too late!
The Greek javelins were murderously effective against both friend and foe. It was my own oversight to place Greek skirmishers to the rear of Iranian levy soldiers, the former caring little for the value of the lives of the latter. Of course, such losses are unacceptable regardless of one's personal feelings. I will have to discipline the Greeks in these regiments, although I fear the shame of suffering my disapproval will only inflame their contempt for their Eastern comrades in arms. Nevertheless, I cannot allow this behavior to go unchecked, so this is the choice I must make. We lost 200 men in the assault, against a force less than half our size. You can see that nearly half the losses are made up of friendly fire, so I'll have to be a little more careful with my javelins in the future. I give Coin on Galaton the opportunity for peace, if they agree to become a Seleukid satrapy, but they remain unbowed by the sting of their recent defeat. I plan to move on the large settlement of Ancyra next turn, so I recruit some Cappadocian hoploi to the army. Antiochus has also ranked up, and gets a couple of new skills including Master of Statecraft, which adds a small bonus to diplomacy. I noticed at this point that he isn't married, which is a bit odd. He should be married to the Seleukid queen Stratonike. It doesn't make too much difference without the family tree mechanics, so we'll assume for story purposes that he is married to Stratonike, and should he marry again, we'll say that he's put her aside for the new woman. Now in their own turn, Coin and Galaton ask for peace, offering to pay over 2,000 talents. I again negotiate for their submission, but they flatly refuse. It seems that the Celts have made good use of their term to take one of Sardis' settlements at Pessinous, so a defeat at Ancyra won't be the end of their faction. I move Antiochus up to the border with Ancyra, and add a couple more Cappadocian hoploi in preparation for the coming siege, but there's little else I can do for the turn. On the following turn, Eurydice has recovered from her injuries and is back in action at Galatia. Eurydice again tries her luck at poisoning the well at Ancyra, and this time has success. Following this, Antiochus brings his army in to besiege the city, beginning the construction of a battering ram and additional ladders. Eurydice has also ranked up. I hadn't bothered to check out her traits before this, but she's a former, now freed slave, which helps the local public unrest and slave unrest, and she's born sneaky, which gives a sizable boost to cunning. However, she's also a bit philosophic, and evidently, although she isn't above murder and deception, she has some sort of an objection to the use of poison, so I'll have to keep that in mind going forward. Coin on Galaton now more than double their offer for peace, but I'm still not satisfied, asking again for them to become a satrapy. Now that I'm at the walls of Ancyra, I'm very unlikely to accept anything else. With our refusal of the offer, the Galatian king sallies out with his garrison at the small nearby army to attack Antiochus and the children of Tyche. The balance bar doesn't give us great odds for the battle, but I'm going to fight it myself rather than retreating. It's a more or less open battlefield, with the Gallic forces approaching our position on the road from the west. I deploy on the northern side of the zone to put the large hill in the center out of our direct path. I keep the pikes as a center line, and my weak Iranian and Cappadocian spear levies are arranged on either side of the line. As the battle gets started, I can see the Galatians have smartly taken the high ground on the central hill, but their reinforcements are approaching from our side on the map to the north. So I begin moving the army to intercept the reinforcing garrison army. This could result in our getting flanked, but it would force the Celtic army to leave their position on the hill or be picked apart separately. I'm not able to reach the enemy reinforcements before they've advanced in front of my line, but a shower of sling stones and javelins draws their advance away from the hill and toward my front line. I've positioned the front line now in an L shape to keep a defensive front against the enemies coming off the hill. My Cappadocian levies, weak as they are, engage the oncoming enemy spears, fixing them and allowing my cavalry and elephants a small space to sneak around the right flank. My skirmishers moved back, and again the bulk of the enemy infantry smashed into the two right-hand pike phalanges. My attempt to block the Galatian flank assault from the left has only been partially successful, as two of their cavalry regiments have used their superior maneuverability to approach the rear of my line from the southern side. The Iranian spears are able to engage one of the two units, but the other slips past and begins making mayhem among my skirmishers, while at the same time, my Iranian levy is faring poorly against the other unit. Forced to abort his flanking attack, Antiochus rushes back to salvage the rear of the formation, while the elephants continue along the northern flank. With one Iranian levy down, the other moves back to engage the enemy cavalry. Fortunately, the arrival of Antiochus's men seems to be quickly turning the tide here in our favor. On the right-hand flank, things are going much better for the Cappadocian levy spearmen, who have generally beaten back their adversaries in melee. However, my elephants hit a snag when skirting the periphery of this combat. They were slipping past the melee without any difficulty until I issued a charge order at the enemy skirmishers in the rear of their line. This would seem to have been a little bit premature, as it caused the elephants to stop and involve themselves in the adjacent melee. This would have been fine, except that it's driven the elephants completely berserk, and now unfortunately they'll start trampling friend and foe indiscriminately. Fortunately, the elephants soon head off toward the bulk of the enemy formation, but not before they've inflicted tremendous casualties on one of our own spear levies on the right. With the situation contained on the right, but weakening in the center, Antiochus and the cavalry swing around the left-hand side of our line, splitting up to charge the Galatian warriors and levy freemen, who have nearly broken through the left flank. Now we're in a race to see who will outflank who, as my center two pike units are both wavering, but my Cappadocian levies close in from the right. However, this all becomes completely irrelevant, as the elephants decide to join the central combat, hitting the enemy's cluster of troops from the northern side. It's absolutely devastating, as the elephants smash through one unit after another, barely suffering a scratch in the process. Antiochus and his men mop up the action on the left and in the rear, and the turning the tide and the presence of their general has helped to keep our front line of pikes from breaking, even as they've suffered nearly half their number in casualties. As the elephants mow down the remainder of the enemy melee assault, along with more than a few of our own men, my cavalry tackle the enemy general Rhidomaros in the center. Although not technically routing yet, the entire Galatian force is withdrawing some broken melee units retreating alongside the skirmishers. With the destruction of the enemy general and his retinue, the remainder of the Koinon Galatae forces are quickly ridden down by my cavalry units, resulting in a costly but significant victory for Antiochus Soter. We all but destroyed the enemy force, but suffered enormous casualties in the process, over a third of which were not enemy kills. I suspect the elephants, who scored 1,000 kills by themselves, are to blame for most of this. Now that it's back to our turn, we get a notification about the Eleusinian Mysteries, the festival adding to public order and cultural conversion. A very nice and timely boost for us in light of our recent conquests. I go ahead and capture Ancyra, which, now bereft of its garrison, is unable to resist Antiochus's army, even in its damaged state. Koinon Galaton remain open to a peaceful end to the war, even as they persist in their obstinacy for independence. We'll find out next time how Antiochus will approach this situation: peace in exchange for enormous reparations, or uncompromising destruction of his enemies. To the south, the lands of Cilicia beckon, although any action against the Cypriots will almost certainly provide Ptolemy II Philadelphus an excuse to kick off another Syrian war. And to the east, our rebellious former satrapies maintain their independence and their hostility, a circumstance that no doubt vexes Antiochus Soter, having spent his prior co-regency with his father subduing the upper satrapies. Thanks for watching, and join me again next time for another episode of the Astronomical Apocrypha.